Okay, so let me minimize that and that. And I'm in Visio and I'm in class diagram. If you want to do it with me, you can. And I was thinking of actually, so let me go into, I was thinking of doing like, you know, the ORCA card. You know, just doing, how would you set up the classes to track the ORCA cards, trips, that kind of thing?
Disabled pass, with pass.
Yeah, so there's all the different kinds of pass. I haven't decided. When I was thinking about that as an inheritance tree, there's problems with it. I think they actually put it all in one bundle. But so I was going to go into real quickly, show you something that what an ORCA card looks like. If any of you ever, that'll show you what's on your ORCA card. So I think I have some pictures in camera. Yeah. Yeah. Which is really useful for me because a lot of actually tap in or not. I'll show you in a moment what that bizarre here.
Why do the instructors have a different domain than the students?
I'm not sure. Well, we can do a lot more, but you'd think it would be just permissions.
So it's easier for you guys to teach at other colleges?
Maybe. I'm not sure. So this is the current one. I want to go to last year's 255. That is 15. Let's try that one. So these are screenshots. Let's see how if it pops up. That's what's on. Basically, this is kind of what it looks like on there. So it tells you. It tells you what station you did it. It has the date. It has that this is a pass. If you have one where you pay money, it would show you the fare. Shows you again the time. And it doesn't say whether you're getting on or off. It just compares the two, I think.
We only ever tap on.
No, you're supposed to tap off for the light rail.
Oh yeah.
If you got a regular ORCA card.
Even if you have a pass.
Not for the disabled pass.
Maybe not, but for the school here occasionally tells us, please tap off, because what they do by default if you don't tap off is they just charge you for the farthest station. What?
Or for the whole day?
Well, no, they just charge you for the farthest station that you could be on that ride. They usually time out in a couple of hours. So
What if you prepare?
like a pass?
Yeah.
They still charge. So if you buy a pass, well, I don't know if it is for, there's all sorts of different kinds of pass. I'm not sure I'm going to try to go into that when we diagram this. So like with the school passes, and when an institution provides the pass, the institution pays for the actual fare, but it's just that they're billed for it as opposed to, so it's a pass for me, but if I don't tap off, the school gets paid for the furthest thing on the route. Now, if you buy your own pass, I don't know how that works.
It probably only goes still by the hour. Maybe that's the the deal that the schools and larger institutions get.
Yeah, so it might be cheaper ultimately for the school to pay the fare than to buy just a straight out pass. I don't know. Because I think you can, as a consumer, you can buy a pass, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think the pass is just for however many days, right?
It's for the whole month or cards for the day, or you can buy them for different amounts.
Right.
You could just top it off.
Yeah, or I have
Well,
a-
so one of the things that you can have, and there's another picture in here. I have a couple of pictures. What do we got with this one? Oh, this is all sort of the background. Now, to get a screenshot, I have to press my volume and button. My volume pops up. It has like the vendor ID, the type, the subtype, you know, all these so a lot of meta information about the pass. This isn't super relevant. I just wanted to, when you're actually building classes, you want to build them related to the real thing, right? So it has a serial number. There's all sorts of meta information that's on these cards. There's actually a lot of information on this card. And again, I'm not going to worry about all of that. Does this one have, so if you have money on it, right, it keeps track of the money and subtracts it as you use it. I don't know if this, I suspect the subtraction doesn't happen, although it might.
Yeah. It's an they call it an e-purse.
Right, an e-purse. But the e-purse would be, I don't know if the subtraction happens with the kiosk, writing back the amount, or if the subtraction happens on the card itself.
I think I heard somewhere that once the bus gets back to the barn or gets to the train gets back to the storage shed, then it syncs with the database.
Yeah, now some of them, all right, so I've heard different things actually. I think they actually are synced real time. Now, they may not have always been, but they're wirelessly. All the buses, all the trains and things are wirelessly connected. Probably if the wireless is down or if it can't connect, it syncs later. But generally, they sync in real time.
Well, if it's down, it won't let you tap your Orca card.
I think well, actually, that's right. If you're on a bus, you can't tap it if the
They just give you the right.
they're free. Yeah.
Yeah, which is always nice.
So anyway, I just wanted to so this is actually this is a big project, and we're not going to do all of it, but I just wanted to kind of objects would relate, because I think the objects here are things we know, to give you an idea of how all this stuff can work. Again, yeah, it's really complicated in real life, and those databases have to be massive, right? Because they're going to, a whole other project here, which I'm not going to do right now, would be to figure out the database that would be storing all of this, because they want to analyze all that information, right? They want to know who's writing when. Now, you aren't necessarily attached to your Orca card. I mean, unless you register online with your Orca card, they don't know who owns it, right? It is just a number. They know where the card was purchased, and that's about all they know for it. If you register so that you can look at your balances and renew them online, then they know everywhere you go. So that's up to you if you want to, let them know that. With the school ones like this, so the Metro doesn't have like my name associated with my number, but the school does. If the school wanted to search Metro's databases to figure out where I was traveling, they could, because they know what card number I have.
And they registered those cards.
Yeah, so when they buy the cards from Metro, they get probably a big stack of them, and probably the serial numbers all in a row, basically. And then when I get a card from them, I write my name next to the serial number, and they go, So it's interesting. So I'm going to make a kind of a simpler version of this, but I'm going to start off with a thing called, I'm going to call it the trip. I doubt if that's what they call it, but the trip is basically what is, what was on that one card where you have, so the station name, right? What constitutes a trip on a bus or a train? We'll do some inheritance and stuff here too, but this one's going to be. I'm not sure if station name is the right name for this.
I'd say point A and point B.
Well, what they do is, so when you tap, each card reader has an identity, right?
Oh yeah, and it's not like you tap when you get off, so probably only.
For buses, yes, but for trains, you tap them both on and off.
Oh really? I've never taken a train, so I really have no idea.
Sure.
Would we want it to be like I guess we're not doing databases, so we don't worry about these.
Well, you might do or maybe card reader number.
I've never had to go to the. I don't go outside.
What other fields might be on this?
Not unless it's for vacation.
So think of this as the recording on, right? You're going to. Is that still too small?
Hands.
So I'm thinking this is in front of it. We'll assume that. So there's a card reader number, which would say, did you tap this? That could be associated with one. Was this a bus? Was this a train? Was this light rail? Was this a trolley? Was this a ferry? So the card reader number could be associated with what it is. So other things that would be on this in terms of the trip. Start time and date, right? Or probably the time of the tapping, because they don't actually worry about start end. They just compare to.
Yeah, they definitely know the time of the tap because otherwise those security guys that jump onto the rapid rides wouldn't know how long.
Yeah, well, as I said, I have an app. You wanted to know what it was. You already did, okay. There's an app you can get that will read. You can read the card like the security people do.
Huh.
Probably, I could probably, if I got close enough, read other people's cards too. I'm not sure that would matter, but so the time, I'll say time of tap. Date, of course, right? You could just do time and date. What else is there anything else?
For the trains, you probably want the time of tapping off as well, right?
Well, so that isn't how they do it, although that might make sense. So what they do is there's a separate entry for each tap, and basically they look for a pair. Does that make sense? Yeah. And a pair that are in the same date and in a reasonable time span, I would assume. So I wonder how that works when the train dies. Wonder what their time span is. Because I've sometimes it's taken me hours to get home. Because the train dies or they hit a car or they run over somebody. It doesn't even have to be
Over somebody.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be our train. It could be another train. You know, the trouble with trains is that there's only so much maneuverability on those tracks, and if there's a fatality or an accident, all the trains will be stopped. Or like one time they upgraded their software, and every train on the West Coast died.
On the West Coast.
Yes, and weirdly it's in Texas that they updated the software.
Of all places.
Well, but Texas is for some reason where the IT infrastructure for all the rail traffic on the West Coast is. So when they updated, all the signals stopped working. Which basically means you have to stop the trains.
System test problem.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think they would have tested that before they did it. They may have. But one of the things about testing is that they may have tested it on a local bed, but they may not have tested it at the scale coast involved. I don't know. So what they did is they had to uninstall and go back to the old one. Took them a couple hours. Anyway, so we got the date. I would say probably the fare. You know, the fare amount. Or probably the fare. What do you think? I'm thinking this through. I actually pre-diagrammed it in here, but I'm kind of rethinking it as I do it.
The fare does change.
The fare changes, right? So the fare, you might have to do some, in the kiosk, you might have to do something like, well, so I'm going to put fare there, but I'm going to put a method here, which I will leave, which I'll call calculate fare. No space, and it should probably. Right, because there's a lot of different factors depending on. All right, so the fare is different for every mode.
Yeah, wouldn't it be something like you have a tap on location and a tap off location, and then that's plugged into the calculate fare?
Right, although they don't actually, so maybe calculate fare wouldn't happen here.
Yeah.
If you look at the actual cards, they don't tap on, tap off. They have two trip entries, basically. One where you tap on, one where you tap off. And then one presumes that the calculate fare would happen.
After you tap off.
Right. So it wouldn't necessarily be part of the trip.
Won't there be like a location tap here because there's different zones?
Well, so I'm thinking the card reader number would be, so every card reader would have a unique number. And in the database, it would tell the location and type it is, whether it's on a bus or it's a train station or it's a light rail. So in this, you would only need that, and then the database could tell you the rest, although you could probably add a thing here. Fare, there will be a fare. I suppose that could come in from the database also. There would have to be some kind of calculation. I don't know. The trip probably doesn't have the fare. I'm not sure where that would be. Let's take it out. These are the kinds of things, as I said, I just want to sort of get the idea of how you would think about these objects. So the trip is anything else about the trip. We know the time, we know the date, we know the card reader numbers. Anything else we need to know? We probably, well, so the card number can come from the card. I'm going to do the ORCID card next. Let's leave that for now. We can always revisit. And that's the other thing about all of these diagrams that we've done. You can always revisit them, and you should. So I'm going to call this the card. All right, so the card has some things. One of the things that it has is it has an array of trips, right? And just, this is how they actually do it. It doesn't really matter. There's 8 trips on a card. That's all they track. It's the last 8 trips. So when it's essentially, is this a queue or a, you just put the trip at the new trip at the top, and it pushes the other one down, right? And then it after 8, the 8th one gets pushed out. It's just gone. So it just tracks. Now the database, their database tracks everything, but on the card they only track the last 8 trips. I wonder what that does. Well, it's because you're always putting them at the top. The pair should always be together. Trying to remember, there's Q and there's, what is the other one when you're doing data structures? There's Q, and so there's first in, first out, and there's first in, last out.
Last in, first out.
Last in, first out, yeah. This would be last in, last out, basically. Or no, last in. Because it moves from the top and forces it down. So the very last one that you put in would be the last one out. I'll look. There's a name for that structure. The card would have a card number, right?
preference indicate?
That it's an array.
Okay.
It probably has something like purchase date on it. Do I want to say type? Card type?
Yeah, because it is card type.
Yeah, and I had thought about doing this as inheritance, but it actually is hard to do as inheritance. I think I may do transportation, basically the way the transportation types might be inheritance. I'm trying to think of these things as we go on. So card type, what else can you think of?
Balance.
What?
Maybe the balance.
So you would need the balance. What do they call it? E-purse?
Me first, yeah.
So in the e-purse would be the balance. What else would we want? So we got the trip, we got the card number, so we got a list of trips, purchase date, card type, e-purse,
Expiration.
possibly. Well, and you could always have an alternative as never, I suppose, or just not have an expiration date.
Value would be tied to the e-purse.
What?
Well, I'm thinking that the input expiration date would not be there because the value would be tied to
If you have an e-purse, but if it's a pass, it has an expiration date.
the pass.
They'd be tied to the card
My
number.
e-purse is in my e-purse is 0.
You can still have e-purse even if you have monthly.
Right. And the daily ones are just, we basically just put money on it, price for the day. There might be a day pass one too.
So would we want the card to have like a pass object that would?
So one of the things, card type. Card type would be pass. So there are lots of card types. And theoretically, we could do an inheritance tree, but I think it would get messy early. So among the card types, there's e-purse, right? So that the e-purse is there even if it's a pass card, but it's just 0. The card type could be the e-purse that you're putting money on it. It could be day pass. It could be month pass. It could be year pass, right? So there's all these different passes. Or the school one never wears out until my card quits working. The other thing that you could have here are, and this gets even more complicated, there are regional. You can get it so that it's only for the Seattle area. You can get it only it's only for the South Sound or only for the North Sound. Right? So you can get a regional pass. You can also get a pass that's purely for Metro or purely for Sound Transit or purely for community transit or purely for Pierce Transit. So you can get it that's specific to a particular what would you call them? Company?
Regions?
What?
Region?
Well, it's not region. So you can get a regional pass, but you can also get a pass that's specific to a particular transportation provider, like Sound Transit. Or something
For the
like that.
state ferries, maybe.
I don't know if there's one that's explicit to the state ferries. I mean, if you have one like
There's one.
ours that are everything, all regions, all transport, it'll cover one passenger on the state ferry. So, I mean, if I wanted to use it, I usually don't use it on the ferry. As a walk-on, it would cover me. But in a car, it would only cover me, and I'd still have to pay for the car and any other passengers. Is there anything else that we'd want on the card? It's not super important that we get everything. Now, here's what I don't know. So I'm going to, down here, I do not know if these methods are on the card. I'm going to say add to purse. You know, because you'd want to be able to add and subtract fares. Okay, does that make sense for a card? And these have a relationship. What kind of relationship would this have? Anybody have an idea?
Association.
Well, you know, I think I would do this. Not that it matters a whole lot. I would accept association, but I think it's actually like what they call aggregation, because this trip class is going to be contained in here, but I'm going to let it exist separately from it too. Does that make sense? There's an array of trips. So this class contains some trip classes. Does that make sense? Anything that doesn't make sense, let me know. This is the point of doing this is just to give you more feel for this, I hope.
So the trip class is inside the card?
Yeah, so the card is containing trip classes, but I made it the empty diamond instead of the filled in one because the trip will exist outside of the card as well, right? So it's contained by the card, but it has its own separate existence. Because one of the things that we'll use the trip for is this is probably the information plus a little bit more that would get sent to the database. I'm going to make, what did I call them here? My diagram in here, by the way, is not, it looks like this, you know, card. You know, it's not like a sophisticated diagram. And typically when I'm doing it for myself, I just do that, and I don't necessarily write out all the fields, but I do, ultimately you would want to, right, to get the, but when you're first just trying to think of what the objects are and what their relationships are, this kind of stuff is interesting and ultimately necessary, but you don't necessarily have to do it first. You can come in and fill that in later.
Now, is this class specific to object-oriented programming?
Yes. Well, I'm making it so. It does. Systems analysis is not specific, but I'm basically doing it that way.
So you might want to make sure that your fields that have the same names are defined the same way in different classes.
Right. So this trip will be basically this object.
Okay.
And so it'll be an array of these objects. And yeah, naming is important. One of the things I was having you guys all work on different parts. One of the things we didn't focus on is that if you were actually going to bring this all together, you all should have agreed on certain kind of naming conventions, because otherwise you're not going to have any idea what other people are doing or how to make them talk to each other. This part I'm going to do as, I'm going to call them, what did I call them here? I called it a transportation kiosk. These are where you tap the card. And you don't have to have such a verbose name, but this one, let's think of what's generic. And this one I am going to descend from. I'm going to do a little bit of inheritance. It will have we called it card reader here. So maybe let's, instead of transportation kiosk, call it card reader. I know you hate it when I change things midway. So I'm going to do card reader number. Right, so this gets transferred to the trip. What other kinds of fields would be on here? This might be where the fare would be, right? Because these are going to be specific. to different things. I'll put the fare there. What else?
What kind of mode of transportation it is.
So I was going to do that as inheritance, though you could put that here.
Trip advisory in case it's a snow and.
Do they do that on a card reader? I think they just say,
I don't have any idea about any of this.
when you tap the card, it just says approved or not approved and what the amount is if it's money.
Oh.
It will tell you if it's insufficient funds, right?
Okay.
So that would be a method. It's probably actually subtract fare. I'm suspecting that it's done here and then written back to the card, actually. So the fare is written back and then it could be substituted. And this would have an argument. Both of these would have an amount that's added in. So we could fix that in a moment. Part of the subtract fare is that if you don't have enough on your card to subtract it, it would give you the message, right? That it's not enough. What else would be on the card reader, just on the generic level? Well, that's what I'll show you what I was going to do. I think the date would be here. Let's not worry. Let's go away from the fields and let's do, if we were to do the types of transportation. There's bus. There's train, and I'm not sure if it's super important to distinguish between light rail and, because they operate similarly.
They do have different fares though, right?
They do have different fares. Now we can do it as a light rail.
They have the ferries on there as well.
We could. Do we want ferries?
That would get really complicated really fast.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Pretend we're somewhere where there is no water.
All right. Well, we could. I mean, it's not going to be too bad. I mean, because I'm not going to bring this all the way to fruition. Although I did once, and I might find, if I can find it again, I might post it. I actually coded all of this so that you could metaphorically tap your card, and it would do everything for you. We would record the trip, and it would, it was actually fun. But
So you made Metro's whole database?
yeah, but I ignored a lot of complexities, right? It would actually, I think it'd be fun to work on a project like this. It would be, it could be quite long. And there's so many exceptions that you have to pay attention to along the way. So I'm going to make these as inheritance. So basically, these are all going to inherit from card reader. These are all different kinds of card readers. I don't need a class, I need an inheritance. So, a couple of things about inheritance. That didn't work. There we go. That's what I was wanting. Is that the arrow always points at the parent. That didn't work as well as I'd like, but that's all right. Okay, so they're all pointing at card reader. These are all different kinds of card readers. If you're doing inheritance, they all have to be of the same type. They can't be somewhat different types, right? These all have to be card readers. So they all get the card reader number, the fare, the date, the subtract fare. But maybe the fare, so the fare will be here, but it'll be different in each case, right? So the bus might have, in addition, the bus number. What else would be part of the bus? Any idea? Right, so zone. That actually should go up above. I was thinking that, yeah, actually the route is separate from the bus number. And I would have, so maybe peak times are the same on all things. Is that right? I don't know either.
The buses have times.
What?
The light rail doesn't have.
Right, I know. Only the buses have peak times. I'm going to so we have date up here. We'd want time here too. I'm going to put it up here because it would be shared by everything. So this would have calculate fare. I can't type. Well, actually, if we do instead of subtract fare, if we just do calculate fare, then everybody has that. Is there anything that would go there as well in terms of a method? So we got when we calculate fare, we have to take into account if it's peak or not. We have to count the zones, the route. Anything else? It's not super critical. I just want to get the basic idea, right?
Shouldn't you put peak times in card reader then? So they can all.
Well, but they don't all have it. Trains don't have peak times.
Also, like only Sound Transit buses don't have peak times. Should we put like bus agency as well?
They're the ones who do the in-county.
Yeah, so maybe we need to split up bus. So we could do that. Let me. So let's do. We want it as agency. Well, actually, don't community. What are they called? The ones to go to Everett?
Community transit.
Community transit, don't they do multiple zones?
Yes.
So
it's Pierce Transit.
But they don't have peak hours.
Community doesn't?
No.
So it's only Metro that has peak hours?
Yeah, it's
So they got zones, they got route. So let's just do one subclass here for Metro. And we'll call it and we'll just add and the fare for peak is the same both peaks, right?
Yeah.
You'd probably have fields for like morning peak start, morning peak end. afternoon peak, but I'm just gonna put those just to differentiate it a little bit. Don't they do a morning peak time too?
Yeah, they do morning, and I guess, yeah, 3 o'clock.
And you probably would want, because the fare is different, you might want peak fare. Okay. So this is still, you know, a type of bus, and these get to be more specific. The train, I mean, I suppose you could do it instead of light rail here. I suppose you could, let's delete this, do an inheritance tree. This is something you'd have to decide. Where you do sounder and light rail. And I suppose if you wanted to get really complicated, what do you call trolleys?
Streetcar.
Yeah, streetcars. They run on rails. So I'm going to do inheritance here. The trick with
You change
these,
which end of the connector has the arrow?
what?
How do you change which the end of the connector has the arrow?
You might be able to do it by right-clicking on it and doing set connector type, or the main, I don't know. What I usually do if it goes wrong is just delete it and do it again.
Can you scroll up just a bit?
Sure, just a sec. Damn it. I hate how these things connect.
It's not true.
Yeah. So what for a train, what would be the train elements that would be different? I'm not sure that it's worth splitting sounder and light rail, actually.
I think they blend it.
Well, so the schedule is a lot different, but I'm not sure that that matters. You just put the time, because we have the time and the date for each, right, when you tap on.
Just if those are different fields. Why don't we just have it be the same field for different hours?
Right, I mean, they're both trains. So probably, and the thing is that they would all have their own reader number. As long as, each one of these could have, I don't know, I mean, they would have their own name too. I didn't put that in there, but each one of these could have a name for what it is. The only difference, it would be the fare, and I don't know that that's already up in card reader. What would be different about the train? I mean, they do tap on and tap off differently. One of the things that I'm not sure how they calculate, because mine pass doesn't do money. So it's a different price. So they basically say it's like start at station 1 and it goes to station 9. So this is like Lakewood, not Lakewood, Lakeville? I should know, Lakeland? Somewhere in Tacoma. Yeah, Lakeland. And then it goes to Tacoma Dome, and then it goes to Puyallup, and then it goes to Sumner, and then it goes to
Pacific.
Auburn, and then it goes to Kent, and then it goes to Tukwila. So I guess this is 8. And then it comes here. So the amount you pay between here is different than the amount you pay if you go to there, right? So the pay is differential by station. That's true of the light rail too. If you do the whole route, it's a different thing than if you do just part of the route. So if you do a shorter distance, you pay less. So I'm not sure. That all might be handled under calculate fare. Yeah.
This might be too complicated, but one thing I've always been curious about is kind of how they do, you know, when you get off the light rail and then you get on a bus, it gives you an automatic transfer.
Right.
So you don't have to pay additional fare.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. So I think I know how they do it in a sense, because you will, now if you close off if you tap off the train,
Yeah.
does it still give you the transfer, or only if you don't?
I'm not sure.
I take the light rail and then get on a train there pretty much every day, and I tap off and then it gives me the transfer automatically.
It still gives you the transfer.
But if the bus costs more, then it will subtract the difference from my e-purse, and if I don't have anything in my e-purse, it won't say.
Oh, so it gives you the transfer.
It's just like, okay, fine.
Especially from going from the light rail to Sound Transit, if you want the transfer, it's like plus 25 cents or something.
So it transfers automatically
It
from.
depends on like how much you pay for the light rail, because if you came all the way from the airport to Dove, that's $3.25, and the fare for a Sound Transit bus is $2.75, so it won't charge you extra.
So there's a transfer thing. And bus transfer to light rail?
So going from bus to light rail, then when you get on the light rail, it'll charge you the difference if you pay less.
So
After you tap off, because then that's what
kind of because if you get a paper transfer from the bus driver, that will never happen.
It's 2016, why do you have to pay the transfer?
So it sounds like everything transfers, right? I'm not sure we want to go on with this too much. What I wanted to show, all I wanted to show is you can deal with the objects. The benefit of object-oriented programming is that you can think about what you're programming in terms of the objects that actually make it up, right? So we're talking about buses and trains and cars and cards and trips. So all of those things make sense in terms of the thing that we're describing. You okay?
I'm just tickled, sorry.
And then the other thing I wanted to show is inheritance. So inheritance, the thing with inheritance, and it is a decision whether to do inheritance, it's when you're designing it. There are sometimes other ways to do it, but you can only inherit from if you're the same kind of thing. One of the things that I see a lot of is that you'll have people will inherit into something that's functionally different. It might share a few fields, but it's still functionally different than the parent. That's going to cause you nightmares when you actually code it, because it won't work. Right? So the inheritance has to be of the same kind. This is a generic card reader. This would probably be abstract so that you would never actually use the generic card reader. You would always instantiate either bus or train or ferry or light rail or sounder. And you only need to break these off if there is some functional difference. If it's something that makes them more particular, right? And where you want to break them is that you want it so that each one of these, this is a common to all. This is like this is common to all buses. This is just adding stuff that's unique to the Metro bus, right? So you're always moving from the abstract and general to the more specific to the more specific yet.
Do you care if we do it with inheritance or interfaces?
So interfaces are good for methods. Like everything is going to have a calculate fare and calculate transfer amount. So you could either do that in the abstract class, or you could use an interface. Either one of those would be perfectly acceptable. And you can read in the books. I meant to bring a book. I might go get one real quick, but I do want to leave you some time to work. There are arguments as to whether you should put it in an abstract class or an interface.
Okay.
In terms of object-oriented structures, there are books that read a lot like philosophy. You know, in terms of what constitutes abstraction, what it constitutes encapsulation, how do these relationships work, which relationships are better, should you use inheritance or should you try to do it differently? Why?
So theory.
Yeah, theory. I mean, it's very complex, but it does have, I mean, practical. If you do it right, you create a very flexible, updatable, expandable, you know, program. If you do it wrong, then you're going to end up having to rewrite things all the time. And let me go get a couple of books. You guys can start working on things, and we'll revisit this again. I could code this if you want, but I think what I'll do is I'll look for the code that I have. I'm not going to code it in front